It's time for ProAm Predictions.
Hello and welcome back to ProAm Predictions. I am Paulo D on the amateur side, and of course joining me as always on the professional side we have Bellator bantamweight contender Mr. Brian the Pikeman Moore. How are you doing today, Brian?
Hey, what's up, Paul? Hope all is well. I've just after seeing my good teammate Blaine O'Driscoll losing an unfortunate decision. It was a tough one for him on 5 days' notice, so I'm a little bit crestfallen after it.
But to be fair, considering it's short notice, it was a phenomenal performance against who is generally considered one of the best flyweights outside of the UFC or Bellator at the moment.
He done absolutely incredible. It was like 5 days' notice. I've been sparring Blaine the last couple of weeks, and he's looked outstanding. So when I was speaking to him about the matchup that came in, I was saying that he should go for it, and I still think that was a good choice because he got to show the world, in my opinion, that he's elite flyweight. Like, he went in against Shorty Torres, who is a beast, and he put it right to him. It was 29-28 on my scorecards, as it was with judges too. But on a camp, you see one of Blaine's enormous strengths is we call him the Energizer Bunny. The little fucker just never stops. He's an enormous gas tank for such a small guy. But I think coming in on 5 days' notice, it was a big task to be able to keep that gas tank that high. But I think on a camp, I think he does the job. And it was interesting because Shorty Torres also said that he'd like to fight Blaine with Blaine with a full camp too. So look, he's got his foot in the door in a great promotion that are doing a lot of great things for flyweight. People now know who he is. I don't think, because the way he's improving, I don't think it's going to be long when everybody in the world knows who he is. I think he's just going to keep improving from here.
Yeah, and Shorty keeps a phenomenal pace as well. That would be a tough one with a full camp to prepare for cardio wise. So to come in on 5 days' notice and to be there right until the last bell was it's something to be said for that.
Oh yeah, look, I'm super proud of him. He's a fantastic teammate too. He'll always help you out. He's just a phenomenal person. Blaine is, but I'm glad that he put in such a great performance. I hope people do understand that was a 5 days' notice fight, and with that he still put it up to one of the better guys in the world and made it a very close contest. But onwards and upwards. So well done, Blaine.
Of course, and we did have some other Irish interest in the last week or so. We had the Cage Warriors trilogy was last week, and there was a few Irish fighters on that came to kind of, now they've been in prominence already, but they kind of showcased what they're about. The two that come to mind obviously are Ian Garry and Paul Hughes. What did you make of their performances?
Top level, class. I love watching those two guys fight. They're so well rounded. I think everybody kind of veers to say that Ian is such a high level striker. He is, but his grappling is excellent too. He's got great wrestling. And Paul Hughes is extremely well-rounded, so like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. We really got to see what they're about. And we could be potentially looking at two more, world titles come back to Ireland, because I think Paul Hughes should get the featherweight shot, and Ian Garry is going to be contesting in a very tough fight against Grant, but I believe that he'll beat Grant. I really do. But I think it was a great night for both guys. I think that they really showed what they're about, and they done excellent.
Of course, Vucenic picked up the featherweight title in that main event on the Saturday night against Morgan Charrier, which was a bit of a surprise for people. Charrier is one of the top featherweights in Europe at the moment. And of course, there's a lot of people saying that Charrier should get the automatic rematch. But considering it was his first title defense, I don't know if it goes that way. I think the narrative is built in there with Hughes, and it was such a close fight. I think the nod should go to Hughes next.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I've trained with Morgan, and he's a good guy and he's a good fighter. He tends to kind of sometimes just lay back a little bit. For such a good athlete, I think he could push the pace a little bit more. And when you're defending a belt, I think there should be more urgency. But I'd like to see a rematch with Hughes, to be honest, and Charrier fights the winner. I think you have those three guys that can keep fighting again and again and again, and each time will be a great contest.
And both seem to be on the right track to be headed towards the UFC. We know that Cage Warriors has that background of sending fighters over in that direction. If they both pick up a title, it's looking good for them in their next bouts. But of course, someone who we believe might just have been picked up by the UFC, we don't know for sure, but Paddy the Baddy was added to the UFC fan rankings app as featherweight, which came as a bit of a surprise. But what do you make of him going over now, all these years later, to when it was first being kind of rumoured and talked about?
I think it's a great timing, because Paddy is a very young guy, you know, and when he was talked about first, I think he was mature enough to say, no, I think he was the one who I'm sure he got picked up and signed with his personality and with his style many moons ago, but he decided to put the brakes on that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's coming in at the right time. He's a very exciting guy. A lot of people, and it drives me crazy anyway, they don't, or the casual fan, for instance, much prefers the stand-up, but you can't not watch a Paddy fight and not be entertained by the grappling that he showcases. He's a really exciting guy. Even his walkout, you know, you're on your edge for it. So I think he'd be a great addition, and I think it's a great time coming for him.
What do you make of him potentially fighting at featherweight in the UFC, though? He's bowed at Cage Warriors was lightweight, and it's the most trim I've seen him look. It's the most in shape I've seen him look to this point in his career. Normally, Paddy kind of carries that little bit of, I wouldn't say weight, but he's never been the most ripped guy in the division, any division he's fought in. Of course, we have seen him at featherweight before, but he looked phenomenal at lightweight.
I think in his last few fights, he's looked quite lean. Maybe it's just a maturity, and he definitely seems more disciplined with his diet and with his cut, because I know he's missed it, but he hasn't missed it in recent times. For him now, with the frame that he has to make featherweight, I think would be a big ask, but I'm sure he could do it. And then, you know, if you're fighting in the UFC, which is his goal, you know, you're going to have that bit more urgency and a bit more dedication to go further to get the weight down, you know. So I don't think it'll be an issue. I think probably overall it's probably a better move.
Yeah, the lightweight division. Mind you saying that the featherweight division is a killer's row in the UFC as well. So
it's not even that. Both divisions are insane, but you've got so many enormous lightweights. These guys are fucking walking around at insane numbers. Now it's saying that you got big fuckers at 145. Look at Edson Barboza, how he ever makes 145. These guys are big. But Paddy would be a big 45er for sure.
Yeah, Paddy is 5'10", and just to compare that, Max Holloway, who was one of the longer and taller in the division, is 5'11". Now he would have him on reach, but it just kind of gives you an idea of where Paddy would stand in that featherweight division.
A lot of great matchups for him, though. You know, I'd like to see him. I'd see him jump in and like fight someone outside the top 15 first, and then go straight for the jugular as such, get into the rankings, because I think he could upset a lot of people. His jiu-jitsu was incredible.
For sure. We do need to touch on last week's fight a little bit. Not that I really want to. I went 1-5 again last week, and my record has gone to pot again.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's gone very, or 1-4. Apologies. Gillespie fell out of the card. But Gillespie fell out of the card, and Max Griffin stepped up in the co-main. And what did you make of Max Griffin's performance in that? Yeah,
like that fight was I was with Song. I was to and froing who to pick. In the end, I actually picked Song, but yeah, I was sorry I done that. Griffin looked like a level above, didn't he? He looked great. Very nice finish. I think. Who did he call out after? Actually,
he called out someone, Jeff Neal, which is a phenomenal call out. One of the best I've seen on the mic in a while.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think that immediately, like I was buzzing after I seen him after the fight. I was like, oh, that was a great finish. And I heard the interview, and I'm like, oh fuck, this is a great setup now for another great fight. So yeah, he looked very impressive, very impressive.
And of course, there was the main event. I really want to ask you this: what did you make? All right, performance aside, what did you make of Kevin Holland throughout the whole production?
I think I love Kevin Holland. I love him to I love watching him fight. He's exciting. He's very unorthodox, but I fucking hated the main event. I hated it. It was so annoying. I checked the fights the next day. I don't stay up to watch them. I have two young kids, and I trained as well, and you know whatnot. But I was watching and it took me everything not to turn it off. You know what I mean? I was pissed off. That shit's cool if you're winning. It's okay if you're winning, but when you're losing, something needs to go off. You need to hit a switch. But for God's sake, listen to your corner. Just even have that bit of respect for your corner. They're sacrificing their time and day they're been away from their family to go be in your corner, and you're talking shit to Habib. I think it was just disrespectful. I had no time for it, and to be honest, I was happy to see Brunson getting the win.
That was my big takeaway. I mentioned in the review podcast we did last week. I think it was completely disrespectful. He brought 3 guys to corner him, 3 guys, no less, not 1 or 2, and completely ignored them between the first and second and the second and third rounds. Completely ignored them. I mean, if you're cornering a guy and you're in there, you have a job to do as well. I know at the end of the day, it's a one-man sport, but you're being brought in there to do a job, and the onus is kind of on you in between rounds to take control of that situation. I think it was highly disrespectful.
I can never tell who the fuck is behind a mask, even in like a supermarket, never mind on a camera. But was it Luther in his corner?
It was indeed, yeah.
Yeah, so there you have a highly respected, former title contender, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and you're not listening to him. You just want to play the clown. I thought it was shitty. On top of that, I think his hype train kind of crashed, in my opinion. I think we found out a bit more about him. His wrestling just did not look up to par, and and Brunson was impressive. He got nice takedowns, but he didn't look, that wasn't his best performance either.
Yeah. And
I just don't think it was his best performance.
The one thing I would say here as well is that there's a few people have commented that Jacare must have watched that fight and felt like a fool that he got duped into Kevin Holland's game and couldn't just do what Brunson did and just completely controlled him and out-grappled him. But outside of that, you touched on that we found out a little bit more about him. And being a big enough event and a main event, he was given the spotlight and the camera followed him to his home, and they do these little segments to build up the fight. And he decided with that time to show off his shoe collection and how much money he spends on shoes, and that even when he had $600 left, he spent $600 on a pair of shoes. And I just think you've missed a trick. You're coming across arrogant, and you've missed a trick to show off you and how you stand in your community, in your gym. That's what those opportunities are for. I just think we saw a different side to him, and it wasn't very endearing.
But it goes down to it again. It doesn't. You look at Floyd Mayweather and he's flashing cash. He's fucking flicking dollars in your face. He's driving Bugattis. He lives the life. But he's 50-0. You know what I mean? Holland. Yeah, I bought the hype for sure. But you I don't know. It's a different thing. You want to be a real. You want to be a winner. You want to be a champ before you kind of behave that way, in my opinion. But even at that, I don't like the way he conducted business. I just did not like the disrespect he had for his own corner. I am still a fan of his fight style, but I won't be watching countdowns or anything on him. Let's put it that way.
Definitely. And just before we move on to the main card, we have to remember that Kevin Holland was very vocal in calling out Khamzat Chimaev. And we found out this week that Chimaev is returning in July. I would love to see that fight. Chimaev would absolutely smash him. See if he talks while Chimaev is on top of him.
Yeah. Look, I think Kevin Holland, maybe this will be a big turning point in his career. Yeah. Like he's one of these guys that he's very, very well rounded, but there's a big hole in his wrestling game. He's relatively new to the sport in a sense. Remember we spoke about it last week. Even though he's a good record, he seems to be just all of a sudden in front of us from nowhere. I think this could be a thing where he addresses things, he reevaluates and comes back better. I hope he does. Because there's very obvious faults to what's going on with him. So hopefully he can turn it around.
Definitely. And again, look, it's one of those where he didn't come across well. The opportunity is his now to kind of make the most of the next opportunity that he's given. We do have to talk about some fights this week, though. Of course, we have Cameraworthy versus Jamie Malarkey opening up the main card at UFC 260. And just my pick in this is solely based on Cameraworthy made a fool out of me before. When he was making his debut, I went on a 20-minute spiel and thought it was absolutely hilarious. Thought it was a comedian saying, because he ended up in a co-main event slot in his debut, and I said,
Yeah.
"Is this man worthy of a co-main event slot?" Thinking I was a comedian, but he went out as one of the biggest underdogs in lightweight history, and pulled off a phenomenal guillotine and got the victory. He's since had a loss to Zaitar by KO, but Zaitar knocks out pretty much everyone that he's competed against. And then you have Jamie Malarkey on the other side, who we know is a tough vet coming out of New Zealand, but he hasn't looked the part so far in the UFC. Losses to Framzian and Brad Rydell. He's 0-2 for the promotion. Previous to that, he had 4 KO wins. But I can see Cameraworthy taking not a relatively easy decision, but a grinded out decision in this one.
Yeah, I have Worthy picked for this as well. Yeah, he's coming off a loss, but he's shown his career to have lost and come back again and again. So he has that. But I think Malarkey will feel the pressure coming into this one. You know, you're 0-2 in the UFC. There's a good chance that your head is on the chopping block right now. So I think if he loses this, he could be out of the promotion. I think he'll feel this pressure. I just think Worthy's looked great. It's just his last fight against Zaitar, who's excellent. He beat Luz Pena, who's quite good too. So I can see him winning this, but I see him by winning by TKO or KO. I don't see this going to the decision.
Very good. And up next, you have the ladies. Miranda Maverick versus Jillian Robertson. Jillian Robertson is coming off that loss to Taylor Santos. But previous to that, she did have 2 big wins for her career against Courtney Casey and Botello. Jillian Robertson is tough and as game as they come. She's very, very good when it hits the mat, but I just think she's coming up against a real contender here in Maverick. I spoke to Maverick quite recently before when this fight was first announced. Obviously, this is one that had to be rescheduled. But she's got that determination. You just get that vibe off someone that they believe they're the best in the world, and I do think Maverick has that. She debuted, of course, against Jujua and got a first round KO victory or TKO victory, and that's one of 4 ever in strawweight history in the first round KO victories. She has 6 submission victories as well on her record. So I can actually see Maverick picking this up. I think she could submit her, but I see it going the distance and getting a decision victory over Robertson.
Yeah, we're in agreement again, Paul. I have Maverick by decision in this. I think she's on the up. I think she's very hungry. I think she'll emerge a contender after this. Jillian Robertson is very tough. She's very well rounded. She's experienced, but Maverick, she lost in 2019, which isn't very long, but she's had a lot of fights since. She was extremely busy in 2019. But in her last few fights, she's looked very comfortable. And I think she comes away with a decision win in this one.
Yeah, we're on the same page for that. And then we have a phenomenal fight at bantamweight. Now, these guys, all right, so obviously we know the O'Malley story, and he's now not Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's Salty Sean O'Malley, if you want. And he's going up against... I did indeed, right? That's what comedy does.
No way! There you go.
He's coming up against a Brazilian who had... He was the next big thing at bantamweight up until 2 years ago. And then we don't know what went wrong for Almeida, but he's 1-4 in his last 5, 5-4 overall in the UFC. And this is preceding this was 4 big KO wins. The guy just hasn't looked the same in the last 2 years. And O'Malley is one of those guys. His boxing is still underrated for some reason. That knockout against Wineland was one of the best I've seen in UFC history. The feint uppercut to straight or to right cross. He's 4-1 in the UFC, 2 KOs, coming off that Dana White Contender Series KO. There's a lot of hype still around him even after the loss. I'm picking O'Malley by KO, but I'm so excited for this fight.
I love this fight. I just hope Almeida returns to former form. He hasn't looked himself, and he looked incredible when he first debuted and his many fights after. But you know, he's had a tough run as well, but for a guy who had so much potential. That being said, technique doesn't really go away. So if he can get his head back in the game, the man has outstanding technique. But stylistically, putting these two guys, if they were in great form, I think Sean O'Malley's striking ability and striking style, I think he's loose. He's very unorthodox. He's a bit more diverse against Almeida, who's a little bit stiffer. Now he has very good power. He's very good and direct, but I think O'Malley has better angles and he has better footwork. I think he has better shot selection. And I think he puts Almeida away. I think he'll bounces back. I think that saltiness that you referred to, he'll use that to pull out a good performance and get him right back in. It only takes one win to get people talking about you again, and to put your name in there, with up in the top 5, top 10. So I think he'll do that. I think it's a stiffer test than Cheetah, however. I think I think he's not giving him an easy one by any means. But which Thomas Almeida turns up, if it's Thomas Almeida as of late, I think it's going to be a KO win for O'Malley. If it's Thomas Almeida from, maybe a few years ago, I think it's going to be a hell of a fight.
For sure. And can you remember that Almeida knockout of Brad Pickett, the flying walk-off knee? I mean, that guy was one of the scariest prospects ever at 135 pounds and just never quite lived up to the hype. Whatever happened, something must have happened because it was immediate. He went from best in the world to a very beatable opponent.
Who was his first loss to in the UFC? I can't, I'm going to click back on it because sometimes guys just can't return or, they can't bounce back from losses. He's 22-4, so he had this fantastic record.
Yeah.
He lost to Cody Garbrandt by punches. Picked up again a win against Albert Morales, and then has lost to Jim Moreira, Robert Font, and Jonathan Martinez. Yeah, a loss by punches. You know what I mean? It's hard to take on the ego a lot of the time after going, Jesus Christ, it's just all green, green, green. He was undefeated up till then.
Yeah, he was 21-0 before the Garbrandt fight.
There you go. So that's, when you're 21-0 and you feel invincible and you think that the way everybody's talking about you, you're going to be the champ. It's only a matter of time, and then you get KO'd in round 1. You know what I mean? It's hard to bounce back for some people with that. I've seen people retire after that. I've seen people never become the same again, and hopefully it's not going to be the case here. Hopefully he'll find a return to form.
But here's the interesting narrative in this. So we've seen what happened to Almeida after his first loss. He's gone 1-4 since, and obviously that must have played a factor, being this undefeated prospect and taking your first L. We now find O'Malley, who was 12-0 before his last fight, after taking his first L. Now, in my opinion, even though O'Malley's getting a lot of shit for the way he's handled it and still saying he's 13-0 and undefeated and all this nonsense, but I think he has that super confidence and that just belief that he's still the best in the world. That I think the loss is kind of water off a duck's back to him. I don't even think he views it as a loss genuinely, and I don't think the same thing will happen with him that happened with Almeida, that his head will go down after this.
I think he'll feel the pressure, but I think he's one of these guys that's so confident that he'll turn that pressure into his advantage. He'll create diamonds, as they say, with pressure. I think that's what he'll do. He just hasn't got that mindset of like, a failure. He's a winner.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy he is. I think he's just uber confident. 13-0. Why wouldn't he be?
Yeah. And in the co-main event, another very interesting one this time at welterweight, you have Tyron Woodley on a 3-fight skid going in against Vicente Luque, who is an absolute killer. No, the one loss that stands out in Vicente Luque's record here for me is the Stephen Thompson loss. He lost him by decision relatively recently as well. It was his third to last fight. Of course, we know that that Tyron Woodley has that win over Thompson and figured out the puzzle and the draw in the first one. Look, we know Woodley isn't the same Woodley that was the champion. He's lost to Colby, he's lost to Burns, and he's lost to Usman since. But they're the 3 top guys in the division, you could argue. It's just he hasn't looked like the same guy in those fights. Vicente Luque is a guy that if you're not completely on, he is going to finish you. He's going to put you to sleep on the feet, or he's going to put you to sleep on the mat. In 12 wins in the UFC, the guy has 8 KO victories and 3 submissions. He finds himself in the top 10 at welterweight of all time in both those lists. And he's looking to become one of the top finishers in welterweight history. And let's remind ourselves that Donald Cowboy Cerrone has been active in that division, and Damian Moya, many other big finishers have been active in that division. Luque is looking to break records in a division full of record holders. I can see this one going Luke's way, and I can see him getting a KO in maybe late round one, early round two. And I think Woodley then drifts back over to the rap game, and he's worried more about Nas and BIG than he is about GSP's record.
Before I give my did you give me who are you picking with Sean O'Malley and Thomas Almeida?
Sean O'Malley, KO.
Yeah, so we're again the same. Yeah, I've Luke here, even though this is the one that I was literally I made up my mind during the podcast. I have went back and forward and back and forward, and you know what? I think the only way of knowing is just to know what is going on in Tyron Woodley's head right now, because if he's going to come in and perform similar to how he has in his last few fights, it's going to be Luke all day.
Yeah.
If he comes in, which I think part of me was thinking that he's going to come in, fire in his belly, giving it one more shot, going out on a win, because I think he retires after this, in my opinion, anyway, regardless. And maybe that's what gets him up and gets him fired up. But Luke is too strong of a finisher.
Yeah.
He is it's 3 rounds. Woodley is good over the 5 because he's very well measured, and he can afford to be patient. We've seen that time with the fights with Wonderboy Thompson.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's brilliant at picking up just enough points.
Yeah. However, Luke is a killer, and like you said, he's on both lists. So it's not going to be I'm not going to be surprised when I see Vincent Luque coming out from bell to bell, trying to put him away. And I think him with that kind of tenacity and with that mindset, I think he will beat Woodley. I think Woodley is experienced enough to hang on, but I do think he'll lose a decision. I think Luque will win by decision on Saturday.
Yeah, I can't see Woodley even going the distance in this. I think he's checked out completely. Now, I hope you're right in that we get a fired up Woodley and the best version of Woodley. But even I think at this present time, the best version of Woodley, I think Luque is on the up and he's on the way down. I think Luque still would take it against the very best Woodley in a 3-round fight right now.
Really?
Right now.
Oh, really?
I think the best version we could possibly get of a Woodley in the state that he's in still doesn't match up to Luque in the confidence he has at the moment.
Look, I've seen this. I've visualized this fight in so many ways. Like I've seen Woodley putting on a better wrestling performance than he has in recent years. I've seen Luque getting teeing off but getting comfortable, and then all of a sudden getting struck by an unbelievable athlete that Woodley is with a big right hand. But I've also seen Luque finish it and just putting on a pace on Woodley. And I think that's how it'll go. I think a hungrier man with a very defined goal of what he wants. He wants to be the world champion. Well, I think Woodley is looking to further, to make more of like his rap career, for instance, and other and other endeavors.
Yeah, I think he's just looking to be a celebrity, to be perfectly honest. We do have to move on to the main event, the big one, the biggest, baddest rematch, as they're dubbing it. You have Stipe Miocic against Francis Ngannou. Miocic, again, is the underdog in this one. And look, I've been guilty of this in the past, of not putting enough respect towards Stipe. 8-1 in his last 9, 2-1 since they first fought. And let's just list off some of the notable wins and the KOs that Miocic has in his record in the last 3 or 4 years. Junior Dos Santos, Mark Hunt, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Daniel Cormier. All in the last few years, all KO victories. And we're saying that Miocic is going in there to grind out Ngannou. I don't believe that for a second. I think Ngannou obviously has that one-hitter-quitter power. He's 4-1 since the first fight, and his 4 KOs came in double quick time. 71 seconds was the longest fight he's had, with the exception of the Lewis fight. He's knocked out Cain Velasquez, JDS, Curtis Blades, and Rosenstruck as well. Like, I get that Ngannou is one of the most feared heavyweights and he has that power, but I can actually see Miocic making a statement here and KOing or TKOing Ngannou late on in this fight, maybe the 3rd or 4th round.
Holy shit, we've picked everything the same. That's madness. That's never happened before. I have Stipe.
That's a bad sign for you, by the way.
Oh, I know. Oh shit. I mean, Francis. No. Look, with this fight, this is unbelievable. This is one that people, even though there's a lot of hype for this fight, I think we all need to appreciate it more. You know, this is like the cream of the crop with heavyweights. We have the greatest heavyweight of all time fighting the scariest heavyweight of all time. You know, we when we look back at boxing and we look at Joe Louis and Ali and Fraser, you know, they're legends. We're looking
Yeah,
at two guys now that we should be probably, you know, being so grateful to see this happen, because we're getting the two best heavyweights on the planet right now. And like I said, the greatest of all time versus the scariest of all time. But I'm done with people looking past Stipe.
yeah.
He's unbelievable. His resume is insane. I
Hmm.
think that, but he's so smart. It's his IQ. It's brain versus bronze here as well, and I think brains wins here with Stipe. I think he goes out and he puts on a very well-rounded performance. He avoids the big shots, but it only takes one big shot from Francis, as we all know.
Yep.
The thing that people are talking about is Francis's record in his last four fights. Right, we had that awful fight with Derek Lewis,
Yeah.
but since then he's been knocking people out, great fighters, left,
Knocking
right, and
people
center,
dead. Yeah.
dead. However, I think that plays a disadvantage to him.
Yeah, yeah. He needed more
He's been
time in the octagon.
more time for sure. What has Stipe been doing? He's been fighting one of the best pound for pound fighters that we've ever seen in DC. He's been knocked out. He's knocked him out. He's had wrestling exchanges. He's put his body to the limit with that. However, I think there's just enough break for him to be well rested, head well rested, to come in and put in a great performance. He just needs to avoid that big shot. I think if he avoids that big shot in round one or round two, it's smooth sailing the rest of the way. But I do see Stipe winning by TKO over a tired Francis Ngannou in round four, if I had to be specific.
That's actually literally what I have written down as my pick. So that
There
has
you
no
go.
chance anyway.
So put all your money on fucking Francis.
So we need to move on to our bets of the week. Do you want me to go first this week?
Go for it.
So this week I have O'Malley by KO and Luque by KO in a double.
Whoa. Gonna get nice odds for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the two definites on this card are Worthy and Maverick. I think you put your money on them, you're gonna be coming out with more money for sure. They are favorites, however. I think Worthy's only a slight favorite.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with Worthy, Maverick, and I'm gonna go with Stipe. And if you're wanting to make money on it, go with Maverick and Worthy. But I just want Stipe. I'm gunning for Stipe, because again he's coming in as an underdog. The poor guy, greatest heavyweight of all time, is always the underdog for some bizarre reason. But I'm gonna pick him.
But in his last 9 fights, as far as I'm aware, he's been underdog 7 times.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And that's 7 title fights in those 9 fights. And I believe 6 title fights, apologies. And he's won 5 of them.
That's mental.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. That's a stat and a half.
And
Yeah,
I've been guilty of overlooking Stipe before, but it's because of the competition he's faced. The first time with Ngannou, I think there was just this kind of allure about Francis that he was going to kill everyone. But I think we've seen this equation before, and I'm certainly not going to make the same mistake. Look, if Francis goes out and knocks him out this time, I'll hold my hands up and say I got it wrong. But I cannot, with full conscience, back Ngannou to knock him out when I've seen this fight before.
Look at, I love watching Francis Ngannou. I'm nervous when I watch Francis Ngannou. Do you know what I mean? Genuinely, I'm fearing for his people's lives when he steps in there. That's not even a joke.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, look, but then again, that's what I said at the start. I think we should just take this in. This is prime heavyweight MMA at its best. So we should be fucking lucky to witness this. So it's a great fight. I think it's a great card. We had the unfortunate pullout of Volkanovski and the Ortega fight gone. That would have been that was a massive fight. That was the one I was looking forward to the most, to be honest. But the main event too. It's going to be unbelievable, So another great fight, or another great card. So I'm buzzing for it.
Very good. And of course, we will be back again next week. And next week, we might be at a slightly earlier time because we have Bellator next week, which is on the Friday night. And we're, of course, excited to have Bellator back. And we have some upcoming fights with PFL, Bellator, and the UFC in April. April. Yes, April. So we're going to have a lot to be picking on over the course of the next month. It's not just UFC we'll be picking on. We'll be picking on all the major promotions. We'll touch on some of the smaller promotions if there's big fights, and even some boxing matches that are coming up in the near future as well. So be sure and tune in. Thanks for listening to us each week, and head over to YouTube and subscribe and like. Thank you very much for joining us again, Brian.
Cheers, guys.